Okay, please introduce yourself.
My name is JBorms. I'm from the University of Brussels, VUB, the Flemish one, and I'm an emeritus professor for the moment. But I've been working from all my career practically in Brussels in the Human Biometry and Biomechanics department. Okay, you can cut and then I will continue. I was the first president of ISAC, the founding president as they call it, 1986, but before that I was 8 years chairing the International Working Group on Kinanthropometry. I was involved with XP all these times, and we were just a working group of XP. In 1988, I believe, I was promoted to lifetime membership of ISAC. Can I repeat that again? Yeah. I was 2 years president from 1986 to 1988, and then in 1992 in Barcelona I became a lifetime member of ISAC. Okay. Anything more?
Can you tell us a bit about one or two of the big projects you've been involved in, the big measuring projects?
Well, I recall two big projects. One was a performance and talent project, which was cross-sectional in nature, but the big project was actually LEGS, longitudinal ecological experimental growth study, that actually is still lasting, so I'm talking about 30 years. But in the 70s we started this project with boys and girls. We followed them from kindergarten till the age of 18, and then every other 5 years we were repeating all the measurements, growth and performance, and this is still going on.
And who, other than yourself, who were the other senior measurers?
Well, I recall the late William Duquet, myself, and then a number of assistants who did the anthropometric measurements and also the physical performance measurements. We were not criterion anthropometrists. In fact, we were, but we didn't have the diploma as it is given today. But we trained, of course, ourselves, and we checked whether we were reliable measurers, anthropometrists. I shouldn't look too much at you.
That's fine. And
if you want me to do that again, you have enough footage. Yeah.
And within that project, what were some of the challenges that you had?
Well, we were especially used to cross-sectional investigations, and this was a truly longitudinal study. So that was the challenge of all longitudinal studies, but especially some of the side projects were, for example, the quality control of measurements. And we wrote, I remember, an article in Annals of Human Biology about the quality control of purely longitudinal measurements. And
can you think of any funny things that happened during the project or in another event that stick in your mind?
I don't recall anything of the that was funny of the two projects, but I forgot another one. It was the large international project MOGAP, Montreal Olympic Games Anthropological Project in 1976, and of course all of the stories that Tanner is discussing in his book on Olympic athletes. Well, we experienced about the same thing. We did a lot of walking and running behind athletes just to get them in the laboratory that we had set up just near the Olympic Village. So not any specific pleasant thing that happened, but yeah, all you can imagine what goes along with a longitudinal project, and international in nature also, because we had about 20-25 people working with us from different countries, and so we had to agree on language and on the way we were going to interfere and react and interact actually.
And you were there right at the start of the development of the IWGK and then moving on to the development of ISAC. What's your view of ISAC now, some 20 years later?
Well, I'm following it from a distance, and I see that it is doing well. It's a democratic organization, so that pleases me. But very recently I was asked for an interview which didn't take place, but maybe will take place, from a group from the Catholic University of Leuven. And it was partially related to a master student who was going to do a story of Isaac. So I read it carefully, maybe 2-3 weeks ago, and apart from a few mistakes that were in typically for a thesis, of course, there was one statement, and it is that Isaac should be careful not to become too much isolated, not to remain on a small island, and not to focus too much on the pure anthropometric technique and methodology, which I think is very important. And that reminds me that in my preface of the book edited by Tom Raleigh and
Roger Eston.
Not Roger Eston, someone else, and myself, but I forget the name right now. And in that preface I say something, I mean it's written, but I also said it at the introduction, that is that Isaac and the whole kinanthropometry world should also aim at doing the things that the society also is interested in, and give a meaning and a goal to the measurements themselves. And I'm still a reviewer for a few journals, so that keeps my grey cells active. And I notice that sometimes the papers that are submitted are too purely descriptive and have not enough links with the real world.
Excellent.
That is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Should they look in the camera?
Yeah. Or you can look
Or
to
so I
you.
should be looking at him.
Look, yeah, because you're
Yeah.
asking for an interview
Yeah.
question. Yeah.
Is the angle okay?
Yeah, I'll start. Actually, I might start, if you want to stand there as well, so he's looking at you. I'll get a wide one, and then I'll get the... Yes, that's good. So pretend you're asking a question, Mike.
Okay, so what were some of the big projects that you were involved with?
You ask those questions.
Apart from yourself, who are some of the other criterion anthropometrists involved?
Good. Next question.
And what were some of the challenges you faced doing the project?
Good. Next.
And either in one of those projects or in another endeavour, can you tell us about some funny episodes that happened
Oh,
that you remember?
Sorry, we have to redo that one. Yeah. Bit of a background squeak,
Okay.
sorry.
So either within that project or another project, can you remember any funny episodes which stick in your mind?
Good. Okay.
Because I forgot your questions now.
Yeah, but I didn't. I just asked about what were the big
Let me see,
projects.
I tried to remember.
What were the big projects? What were the
Can you
challenges?
introduce yourself?
Yeah. Can you tell us about a big
Can you
project
just
you
tell
did?
us about the big project? Yeah.
What were the challenges?
Yeah.
Was there any particular incident that you remember stuck in your mind? Maybe an amusing incident? And then what I asked you was, you were there right at the start, and what's your view of Isaac now? Well, I'm here now, so you can't ask that one. You'll have to make up another one.
I mean, at the end of the year, you will be past president.
I'm past president now.
Oh,
right
right.
now,
So, yeah, that's
already.
right. You don't have to wait till the 1st of January.
No, it's as of today, So as of this afternoon, when I handed over the gavel, as it were, then Hans is now the president and I'm the past president.
That's right. And what is your view of Isaac right now compared to when you took over?
I think that Isaac is in very good heart. In the past 2.5 years, we have trained over 3,000 level 1 anthropometrists, over 700 level 2, and some 35 level 3s. We've got translations in English, obviously, in German, in Spanish, in Portuguese, in Japanese, and we have just completed a translation into Mandarin, and we have a colleague in Iran who is completing a translation into Persian or Farsi. So I think we've done very well on that front. I agree with your comment that we have always focused on the technical aspects, and I also agree that we need to broaden that so that there's a meaning to the measures as well as just the measures. So I think that's an excellent recommendation. I think we've got very capable people on board now, and we've got some very bright, capable people at the next step down, the next generation as it were, who are going to come on and look after ISAC and move it even further forward. I'm very positive about the future, and I think that we have an increasing global coverage. We have a big presence in South America. We really have long been represented in Australia and New Zealand. We're now moving into Asia. In Korea, we have more level 3 anthropometrists than the rest of the world put together. And as I say, our young colleague from us, who's a Japanese working and living in Australia, is doing some very good work going back to Tokyo and training our Japanese colleagues in the ISAC method. So yeah, I think things are very positive.
Perhaps I can continue with one question.
Sure.
Okay, here it goes. Could you tell us about the most important projects you have been involved in, maybe one or two?
Well, one was very important, was the 1991 World Swimming Championships, which was in Perth in Australia, where we were able to measure 496 swimmers. I was one of 4 criterion anthropometrists there, and as you described in your comment, one of our biggest challenges was recruiting the athletes to come and be measured. So we had 2 senior recruiters who spent the whole of the 4 days in with the athletes, talking to the coaches, talking to the managers, to get them to come along and be measured.
Do you remember any incident or perhaps any pleasant event?
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because we had the Danish synchronized swimming team came in, and they were very attractive young women, tall, blonde hair, and they were wearing white t-shirts, and we said, okay, we need to take some measures, we need to take some skin fold measures, and so would you mind taking your top off? And we thought, well, they might just roll it up, but they didn't. They just took it right off, and they weren't wearing any undergarments. And we discovered later that the anthropometrist who was taking the bone breadths had stopped reading the 0 sign and was reading the edge of the caliper. So had made a systematic error for the whole team, which fortunately we picked up and were able to correct. Yes, but he lost concentration badly.
Okay, I think that's... Is that okay? Do you remember any event, any special event, or maybe some pleasant things that happened? And some other things, and later in the interview you came back with...
I was an assistant.
Yeah,
We started with SAGAP. You remember South African Games, Anthropometric Project, way back in 1991. And Professor Charles van der Walt, the late Professor Charles van der Walt, was still alive. So yeah, so must we go on and on?
No, just Mike wanted me to tell something particular, and I thought about something not funny, but something that probably happens in a lot of studies where you have to run for the athletes and so on.
Yeah.
And he said something different, totally different, and or the long-term future of ISAC.
I'm very excited about the future of ISAC, hugely. If you look at our accreditation scheme.
And when you're ready, Jan.
Okay. Hans, can you tell us about 1 or 2 large projects you have been involved in?
2 projects that I really remember was the 2 projects we did at the All Africa Games. In 1995 we did the project at the Zimbabwe All Africa Games, and then in 2003 we were in Nigeria in their capital Abuja. So those were the 2 that really made an impression on me.
Can you tell us something specially that happened there?
Yes, we did research on the athletes, huge bunches of athletes. It was very funny. One night we were on our way to the research lab, and the taxi we were in an accident. So, I mean, we were sitting there, we couldn't believe the accident, and we asked the driver, aren't you going to stop and check? No, he said, no, don't you worry, don't you worry. So we just carry on with that car. The bumper was dragging behind us, everything. So we came to the stadium with that broken car in the end.
But you didn't see any crocodiles?
No crocodile, not at all.
Okay. What impact of these two African studies?
Yes, yes. In the past, there hasn't been very large African studies done by African researchers. Although African athletes were part of MOGAP, those data is on other computers. But yes, it had been an impact. It showed that Africa do have researchers that can do those kind of projects. And yes, the data has been published, and we are very excited about those projects. Absolutely.
You are the new president of ISAC, number 6.
Number 6. Yes.
How do you see the immediate and the long-term future of ISAC?
I'm very excited about the future of ISAC. I think ISAC at the moment is growing rapidly, especially our accreditation scheme. Mike was involved now with one of the first courses in China. And I mean, if I just think of countries like China, India, I think the growth there is huge. I mean, ISAC can just go from strength to strength. So I am very, very excited about the future of ISAC, the future of the accreditation scheme. So I think we will grow in 2010 at our next conference. We can report on a huge growth in ISAC, absolutely.
Over het feit dat ISAC zich misschien wat te geïsoleerd opstelt en dat het waarschijnlijk gaat moeten accenten verleggen om toe te treden tot een bredere schare van. Nou, je zegt in Dutch. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Recently I read a thesis about the history of ISAC, and there was some criticism about the fact that ISAC seemed to be a bit too isolated, a bit too far away from the other scientific disciplines. What do you think about this?
I think maybe that could have been in the past, but over the last few years, ISAC has been opening up into many countries. I mean, at the moment we are part of this huge conference here, which is the pre-Olympic conference. So yes, I think maybe when ISAC started way back in '86, when you were the president, the first few years they were isolated. But not anymore. I think they are opening up to many countries, many people all over the world. If I can remember correctly, ISAC has members in more than 40 countries in the world. So I think it's opening up at the moment.
Maybe I have to ask my question a
little bit.
Is it not too narrow, folks? Or so? Yeah. We have to discuss.
It's a difficult question.
No. But
my answer will be, I think, yes, maybe, but then our core business is anthropometry, anthropometry.
You could say that, yeah. I mean, so then they have my opinion and his opinion, but everyone's opinion. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Hans, I read recently a thesis about the history of ISAC.
3,
How we go?
2, go.
Hans, recently I read a thesis about the history of ISAC, and there was some criticism about the fact that ISAC perhaps is too much isolated, but isolated in terms of content, scientific discipline, not enough related to the other disciplines. How do you react to that?
That can be, but then on the other hand, our core business is anthropometry, and I mean we have to really focus on anthropometry, focus on ways to do it better, to have a good accreditation scheme, a good training system where we train people to do good quality anthropometry. So yes, maybe, but then on the other hand, I think it's also important to focus on your subject and to focus on the core business of anthropometry, absolutely.
On the other hand, I see many submissions for journals that are pure descriptive, which are not always accepted anymore by, for example, Journal Sports Science. So shouldn't it be enlarged, the scope of anthropometry?
Absolutely, I agree with you. Yes, we will encourage members not to do only descriptive work, but also to start doing more experimental work, to publish more of longitudinal work. So yes, I agree with you, absolutely.
Are you not afraid that you have lost or are losing the people from body composition?
No, I don't really think so. I think we still have them on board. Maybe there are one or two who is going in different directions, but I mean, we have people like Dr. Arthur Stewart. He's doing excellent work with scanners on body composition. So yes, no, I think there's people who are doing fantastic work in Isaac on body composition.
Don't laugh.
When you are ready.
Well, I'm Arthur Stewart and I'm from the Robert Gordon University in Aberdeen, and I've been measuring using anthropometry for about 25 years now, and I was wondering about the rationale for the corrected girth methodology using a concentric model which actually assumes that we have an annulus of adipose tissue, and it's based on a skin fold multiplied by pi to give you this inner circle circumference. Now, given that that's the theoretical basis invented by the ancient Greeks, I wonder why the somatotype model never captured that geometric model, but just simply subtracted the skin fold from the girth itself without using that pi multiplier. So that was my first question.
On the sec. 3, 2, 1, go.
One thing that's been interesting me for some time is out of the 40 or 50 measurements we could make on the human body to capture the physique, somatotype has chosen 10 anthropometric measurements to describe the physique using the Heath-Carter somatotype method. And I wonder what process you went through to ascertain which are the 10 best measurements to use. Clearly there's a balance to be had between accuracy and how comprehensive that description is, and the convenience of measuring a small number of measures for any one subject. Perhaps you could describe that process for me.
Okay, when you're ready.
Yeah. I've been wondering for some time what process that has been gone through to select the 10 anthropometric variables that are used to describe the Heath-Carter somatotype. Given that we could measure 40 or even 50 variables, there's obviously a balance to be struck between convenience and how comprehensive any description of physique is. So what process was used to select the 10 that we actually are using today? That again.
That's heavy stuff, man.
Okay, when you're ready.
So hang on, just you want me to introduce?
Okay.
I have a question relating to the corrected girth model that is used ubiquitously in anthropometry. And that one assumes that there's a concentric model based on an overall girth from which is subtracted a skin fold multiplied by pi 3.14. Given that this assumes there's an annulus of adipose tissue, what I'm interested in is why somatotype never adopted that geometric model, given that that model could have originated as early as the ancient Greek civilizations.
Okay.
I have another question building on what somatotype can do for us. Should proportionality, indeed the skeletal ratio of limb lengths or sublengths within each limb, be used to augment somatotype, or indeed should it be part of somatotype? And also to that, should we use body symmetry as an issue that we need to consider, particularly in some sports which have a huge effect on one side of the body but not the other?
This one?
If somatotype is a classification system which recognizes a body shape, and it truly is shape, why then do we need body mass to be part of that construct?
When you're ready.
I'm thinking of the history of somatotyping, and I'm thinking that the early protagonists used the available technology of the day, and photography was reasonably new when somatotyping was developed by the various authors in its photoscopic sense. And my question relates to the new technology available in three-dimensional laser scanning of the body. And do you foresee that somatotyping can embrace this new technology to perhaps augment or indeed replace conventional photography to capture the somatotype in its present construct?
Okay.
We're 8 years into a new century, and we're wondering what the future will be for many things with humankind, such as what's obesity going to do? Is sport going to be a charade in 100 years from now? So my question is really a fundamentally philosophical one, is what are the most important research areas for the next 10 years and also the next 100 years? With the technology that we have now, what should we be focusing our research efforts to try and discover in the next 10 and 100 years?
Okay.
Given that we're a few years into the 21st century and we've got lots of health issues and we've got interesting issues with respect to the future of sport, I'm wondering if you could perhaps consider what would be the next important research areas for anthropometrists to be focusing on for the next 10 years, but also the next 50 and perhaps even 100 years from now. What should we be spending the rest of our careers doing?
Okay, when you're ready.
Hello, Arthur. Maybe you can tell us more about anthropometric research projects that have been done in the past by your university and also that you have been involved in.
Well, I'm currently involved with a few different research projects, and it's interesting because Scotland has a rich history and big anthropometric projects. And perhaps the most famous of those relates to medical students dating from the 19th century all the way through until the 1960s, when they captured 6,000 medicine students before and after they graduate, so before they commence year one and after they graduated after 6 years. And they compared those with students of England and Cambridge in particular. And they captured quite a lot of anthropometric data. Some of the methodology is missing, but they were able to show that students then were certainly growing significantly during their 6 years at university. So it was interesting for me to appreciate just how much growth has occurred well into the 20s of these former students. More recently, we've adopted the ISAC protocol ubiquitously in Scotland and also in England and Wales and Northern Ireland. So we're actually pooling data from specific sports groups. Most of that work is actually service and isn't actually research driven, but it allows us to build up a database of what are the physiques of these elite athletes, and then we can use that to inform our talent identification processes. So there's a large number of things in between which relate to health, but in terms of anthropometry, we go back a long way. Compared with other countries, we're reasonably modest in what our achievements have been.
Very interesting. Can you maybe tell us more on your newest project, your scanner project, which you are busy with at the moment?
Well, what's really interesting with scanning is what would take an anthropometrist perhaps 40 minutes to capture in terms of the physique, a scanner can capture in about 10 seconds. It can measure skeletal dimensions, it can measure curved surfaces, it can measure volumes and areas. It can't do skin folds, so it doesn't totally replace conventional anthropometry. But its value will surely be in processing large numbers of people quite quickly. And if we're looking at developing norms, if we're looking at surveying large groups of people at a major sporting event, for instance, then 3D scanning has a significant role to play and has potential applications in health, particularly sport, also in ergonomics and in clothing design as well. And scanners were developed by industries which had the finance to require that they were used to research, certainly the automotive industry, also the aviation industry. But now we're trying to apply those to sport and indeed health. My projects that I've been involved with so far are health, in particular modelling the abdomen. One of the things that happens with age is the six-pack has this habit of turning into a beer keg. And what we're interested in is the health risk, which we might be persuaded that the principal marker of health risk that's an anatomical marker might be the visceral fat area of volume. Now, an MRI scan in Scotland will cost you somewhere between £400 and £800, so something between maybe 6 and €1,200, so a lot of money for an MRI scan, which can quantify that. But a much, much cheaper and quicker and more convenient would be to capture 3D body shape of the abdomen and pull from that the dimensional measurements, which could be a surrogate for visceral fat area. We've done a pilot study in 15 people, and we got some interesting results. We need to repeat it with a larger sample, and then we will publish that and then see if we can actually suggest that there is a health intervention that uses 3D scanning, because it could save an awful lot of money, which is better spent on the most needy people rather than people who just find their way into an MRI system. The other one that we've done is we've actually measured how people change their shape when they're changing their weight. Now, it's interesting because there's an awful lot being researched into dieting. And we looked at weight loss, we looked at body composition loss. As far as I'm aware, there actually hasn't been any work done on what shape has changed. And we can measure the waist circumference and see how much that change is associated with the weight loss. But that actually doesn't give us very much information. What the 3D scanning will do, it will enable you to say, has my shape changed in such and such a dimension? And our preliminary work in 6 obese men has suggested that in a sagittal plane, in an anterior-posterior dimension, we see a very sensitive index of weight change. But in a coronal plane, there is almost no change at all. And that's actually quite an interesting finding. It will be very, very important if we can replicate it in a larger group, or indeed in females as well. Because what that will show us is people need to look at themselves sideways in order to perceive a real change. And as we know, it's very important to have an understanding of what is a noticeable change. Because if these poor people are taking a huge effort, a psychological effort to commit to a program of lifestyle intervention. What's really important is that we know how long we should spend before we remeasure them. Now, we've got some plans to actually determine what is a detectable change, which will then inform the research design for our future studies.
Excellent. One last question maybe. On the funny side, were there some funny stories, funny anecdotes that happened during some of your research projects which you can recall?
I'm not sure how long you would like the answer to last. Two stories spring to mind. One is in my PhD days in the 90s, we were interested in a DEXA scanner measuring your body composition. And obviously the gut is essentially outside the body. It's inside the body, but it's outside the body. So the contents of your gut tends to be added to your soft tissue. Now, those of us who happen to be quite fond of donuts were interested to know if a box of donuts placed on top of your abdomen would be added to your soft tissue in exactly the same way as a box of 12 donuts would be added if you ate the donuts. Now, I did share these 12 donuts with a scanning technician, and we had 6 each, and we scanned one another. And it didn't actually matter whether the donuts were above or within the body, they were added to the soft tissue. And as a result, I'm slightly better upholstered than I would have been otherwise. I suppose the other one was probably more embarrassing than that. I was doing some MRI scanning, and there was an elite marathon runner, and she was a medical student, and she was certainly in no trepidation whatsoever of going into this rather narrow opening for this horizontal MRI scan. So she gets changed, she puts on a hospital gown, but she's still wearing a brassiere, and that brassiere contained some metal. Now, as I'm sure you're aware, metal and MRI don't go particularly well together. So the scanning technician said, we're going to have to redo this after you've removed your brassiere. So she said, I'll take it off and just put it in the back pocket of my jeans. And of course, by this time we're running late, and she has an appointment downtown, and this is in Edinburgh in Scotland. And what happened was we did the scan, we got some good data from the scan. She was very, very lean. As we predicted, she had no visceral fat at all. But she then had to get dressed in a bit of a hurry, and she omitted to put her brassiere on, and I gave her a lift downtown, and she met her friends downtown at a busy pavement corner. Getting out of my car, the brassiere fell onto the pavement in front of all of her friends, at which time she said, well, thanks very much for everything, Arthur, that was really fantastic. at which I turned bright red and drove off into the distance, hoping I wouldn't be pursued by the police. But we have had many times, and I think there is a great place for humour in scholarship. And I think if you didn't have a sense of humour, you would be a poorer scientist.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much, Arthur.
Okay.
Really appreciate it.
Okay, you're very welcome.
When you're ready.
Hello, my name is Hans de Ridder. I'm the African lion from Africa. I'm in South Africa at the Northwest University at the Potchefstroom campus.
Okay, guys, the time of measurement.
And go.
Hello, my name is Hans de Ridder from South Africa. They call me the Africa lion from Africa, the vicious man. No, I'm just joking. And I'm from the Potchefstroom University. It was
And go.
Hello, my name is Hans de Ridder from South Africa. They call me the Africa lion. I'm from the Northwest University in Potchefstroom at the Potchefstroom campus. And currently I am on the executive of Isaac, and it's been a privilege to be there. Thank you very much. Now,
Okay.
hello, my name is Hans de Ridder from South Africa. I'm from the Northwest University at the Potchefstroom campus. I was for 6 years the Secretary General of Isaac, and have just been newly elected as the 6th President of Isaac. Thank you very much.
Keep telling stories, it's incredible. Yeah, he's full of it.
Well, there are lies, there are damned lies, and there are statistics.
Isn't that fantastic? It's in the Thomas and Nelson book.
That's it.
Yeah.
You get liars, and then you get damn liars, and then you get statisticians.
Yes.
I actually used that book for my students.
Yes, it's an excellent book.
Yeah, it is.
I think Churchill